Today, I would love to welcome Mell Greenall from Before You Dig in Australia, or Before You Dig Australia, which is the company name, and as part of this Business Spotlight interview series. So welcome, Mell.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. And let's just start out, if you could introduce what it is that your business does.
No problem. So Before You Dig Australia is an essential safety service for anybody that's breaking ground or doing excavation activities around the country. And essentially what we do is we're a free service for those in construction, DIY, anybody that's putting a shovel or an excavator in the ground, in the sense that you can request the underground infrastructure plans for your job site. So we basically exist to help work towards zero damage, zero harm in terms of keeping people safe when they're digging, excavating, breaking ground, so that they're not hitting essential services such as electricity, gas, water, telco, all of those things that keep our communities connected, but also pose a risk to our safety of our workers and our community. Right. So we're funded by industry for industry. So we're actually a not-for-profit.
Mm-hmm.
We work with all of the major asset owners around the country. So your Telstras, your Geminas, Greater Western Water, anybody that owns infrastructure in the ground are our members. And we work with them to have those plans available and being able to be distributed. But then we also have a safety service and training arm as well, where we do damage prevention and awareness sessions for the construction sector around how to excavate safely and making sure that they understand how to do risk management and read the plans and basically ensure that their workers are going home safe each and every day.
Yeah, and absolutely important, I guess, service that you are providing to industry in general. So yeah, well done.
Thank you.
And how long has this business been going for? Mel?
So we've been around since the early 80s. So initially, some of your listeners, viewers, readers may have seen us as Dial Before You Dig. So we came to fruition in the early 80s after there was an explosion in WA when a gas pipe was hit by an excavator. And we used to operate as 7 individual state-based businesses with their own boards and teams, etc. And it was over the last 18 months that the state boards came together and said, actually, we want to operate as a single national entity. We can do this better, provide better service and engagement and safety outcomes. So beginning of last year, I came on board to lead the organisation through a merger. And bring those 7 businesses together as a single entity. And we did the rename to Before You Dig Australia at that point in time.
Fantastic. And what would you say your biggest challenge has been in I guess, bringing that merger together?
Look, I think it's always around, how do you bring your people on that journey? Like, change is hard, and change when you're bringing in a merger and bringing teams together that didn't know each other very well from around the country, and new governance processes and structures. So my biggest challenge, I guess, when I came into the organization was building trust. Bringing that team on the journey with me to see that, things could be better. Change, while scary, the hardest step is the first one. And once you're on that journey, we would learn together and we would make this a fabulous organization together. And so that was definitely the biggest challenge internally. Externally, it was around, how did we re-engage with the regulators and state authorities around the country, and also with our members to bring them on the journey, to show them that we were doing this to create fantastic outcomes for them and the industry in terms of safety. So it really was around stakeholder management and engagement, and being really transparent around the decisions I was making, and that, that the board was making in terms of change and governance, and being really open and honest. And I also think it was around, when we got things wrong, being really open and honest about that didn't quite go to plan, and this is what we're going to do to fix it.
Okay, so when those things did go wrong, what was the process that you went through to steer it back on track again?
Look, again, I think you've got to be really quick to pivot and change. And I think it's not just when you don't wait for the things to go wrong and for the result to be wrong. Be quick to recognize the early signs. And I think for me, I've always been a big believer that it's about progress, not perfection. Because if you set perfect as your benchmark, you are going to fail each and every day. Versus if progress is your benchmark, you can absolutely be reactive and responsive and pivot as you need. And so for me, it was around recognizing if there were struggles, if there was issues, and being really open and transparent with my board to say, I think we've got to shift a little bit here, or we might need to pivot this, our expectations here. Then engaging immediately with my stakeholders, my members, and really being responsive to their feedback. I don't pretend to be the smartest person in the room, and I never should be. My job is to surround myself with the smartest people in the room.
Absolutely.
So that I can move forward.
I couldn't agree more on that. And just coming back to, being flexible and just get started, I have to put my hand up and say I'm one of the world's worst procrastinators, and I guess I had developed a habit of making sure that all the I's were dotted and all the T's were crossed. And then my coach said to me one day, he said, Phil, just stop it, just get started, because it will, nothing happens until you get some momentum happening.
I think so many businesses are that way. We get suffocated by it. It has to be perfect before we start. And as you said, you just never start.
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of, I've taken that bit of advice, and I pass that on to my clients very extremely often, is because don't wait for it to be perfect. Just get started, because you just don't know how it's all going to come together. And you've got to be flexible, you've got to be quick and make decisions quickly so that you can then get the best outcome, rather than trying to think it through too thoroughly. So
absolutely.
Great words of wisdom there. Thanks, Mel. And I guess the question here is, what have you actually learned about yourself along this journey?
I think I've learned a lot about myself in terms of just my authenticity, whether it's in the boardroom, the lunchroom, team meetings. I think being a younger female that's worked her way up, and I can quite openly call that out. Sometimes, there's been that pressure to be that little bit more masculine in my conversations, or lead with a very tough exterior. And for me, my learnings, particularly as I sort of, even in this journey where I've had to be open and really transparent and vulnerable about when things went wrong, that I actually have brought the best out of people, and I've been able to gain trust and bring that team on that journey with me by being absolutely my true self.
Yes.
And I think, in my boardrooms, where I'm working with, 7 amazing people from across the country in this board who have different mindsets and experiences to me, I've always just been really open and honest. And I think, as leaders, or traditional leadership is often, you want to hide your mistakes. And I think we get brought up that you have to be perfect and quickly cover, or pivot and change, and don't admit when you were wrong. And I think for me, my learnings as I've matured up in my leadership is actually lead when you're wrong. Lean into the vulnerability, admit that you didn't know, and you had to change your mind, because I can't admit when I'm wrong, or that I have to learn something here. How do I create space for my team to admit when they were wrong and they need to learn? Yeah. So for me, it's around, if you want a culture of trust, you have to lead with that. And if you want a culture of open and, people being willing to push themselves out of their comfort zone, you have to lead with that. And be open to that, and being open to the hard conversations when those come up. So for me, it's around, my biggest learnings of be myself, lead with it. It's not all, as I said, it's all about progress, not perfection. And I'm never going to be perfect. We're human and we will make mistakes. And that's the beauty of business. That's what keeps it exciting and interesting, is that things don't go to plan sometimes, and you've got to throw yourself in the mix and get your hands dirty.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think, we've got to embrace that more. We've got to embrace the vulnerability of being human and those tough conversations, and actually beautiful things happen when that's on the table.
Look, I see that happen a lot, and I couldn't agree with you more in that respect. As leaders, learning how to be vulnerable can be one of the hardest things to actually learn. And I see it stifles so many businesses because the leader does not have that vulnerability to be able to say, oh, okay, maybe this didn't work out the way we wanted. Bring the team together, and then collectively start to say, well, okay, it doesn't have to be up to that one person. If you bring the team along,
Yeah.
And everything that you've just described there is what I call the keys to a winning team.
Mm.
Um,
Too.
it covers all of those aspects. So congratulations, well done for actually adopting that, Mel. That's significant.
Oh, it's not easy. And I think, it is you've got to, I think, learn through tough times. And, when you've made, those bad, hard experiences that we all have as we work our way up through our career, and you go, actually, I don't want to lead that way, or I don't want to make those mistakes again, or I don't want the person following in my footsteps to have it as hard as I did.
Yes.
And so I've been really passionate around, fostering environments, and as a change agent, and I do see myself as a change agent, as a leader, and being able to create new paths of working. And COVID was such a huge instigator of that. We couldn't work the way we always worked. We had to trust. We had to lean in, because none of us knew what the next day was bringing us in terms of the good old media announcements at 10 a.m. and what that was going to bring for the next 24 hours. So, I think really letting go of being structured and rigid in thinking. I think COVID forced so many of us to do that, and being much more willing to experiment and try new things and really work with our teams to find the pathway forward, because without our teams, none of us would have survived the last couple of years. So, yeah.
So true. So do you have a favorite quote or saying that actually keeps you focused every day?
I think progress, not perfection, is one big one that I use all the time with my team. One, when they get a little bit stressed about it hasn't got quite to plan, or, this has to be right before we take that next step. I do quote progress, not perfection, quite a lot.
Yeah.
Because I think it does allow you to change and pivot. I think absolutely strategy and having a plan. And, I tend to work in 90-day sprints with my team. But it's not necessarily always about getting to that hard goal that we set. You need to be able to pivot and change, and success manifests itself in different ways. And what you thought was the right outcome in January might be so different from the fantastic result you got in December, because you were willing to follow the path to progress rather than being hard set on perfection.
Look, and I think that is so true. And, if you look at the history of business over the years, I think we're in the technology sector at the moment, with the changes with technology, the changes with, the pandemic, the changes with the economic climate that we're actually living in now. There is just so, I think as the years go on, the uncertainty about everything just increases tenfold. And this is where you have to be willing to be open to pivoting, open to taking the best opportunities that become available as soon as you see them, rather than go through the old dot the I's, cross the T's. So any other sayings or quotes that are important for you?
Oh, look, for me, I think it is about the authenticity, and anything that I really lean into that more and more these days around, just take a breath, and it's okay to be human. And I think, for my team, it's always just around, we need to laugh each and every day, like we are giving so much of ourselves to the organizations that we work in, that if you can't laugh every day, why are you doing it? And I'm a big believer that find the humor in it, find the humor in the little things, find the things that just give you a giggle. I quite often laughed at myself. I'm probably, my team quite sits there and looks at me sometimes and goes, what on earth is she doing? And, something that'll just set me off, and I'll be off on a tangent for 10 minutes laughing at myself. But that's what keeps, the joy in the workplace. And I think, creating that space where enjoy it, because you just never know what tomorrow's going to bring. And, in terms of pandemics and everything else that we've been through, if you can't find the joy in the day, I think you need to take a step back and question why you're doing it.
Yeah, one of the things that I've been doing a lot of work with lately with some clients has been on their values, the company values. And it's been interesting. What we've been doing is getting the whole team involved to go through a process of core values, and then breaking them down, and then bringing in them all the team's ideas together to come up with, anywhere between 4 and say 12 different core values for the business. And And one of the most common ones that come up is the core value of fun.
Yeah.
And that excites me because exactly what you just said, you must be able to have some fun in the business, because if you're not having fun, it gets too serious. And when it ggets too serious, that's when you start to demotivate people.
Oh, yeah. And I think, this day and age where mental health is at the fore of everything that we do, and people's well-being and the expectations, so, of our teams around having work-life balance, and you need to bring joy into the workplace and allow people to be themselves. And if you want to have good teams, if you want to attract talent and keep talent, for me, your value proposition has to be around great culture, a workplace filled with laughter and joy. And don't get me wrong, like, I'm working in safety. It's a serious job, and we absolutely take what we do seriously. And, we're results orientated, and we want to make a difference with everyone that we're working with. But you can absolutely do it with a smile, and you can do it with a laugh and a sense of humor, and bring that to the fore. Because, that's what, I feel very lucky to have a great team around the country who just, amaze me every day, and they inspire me every day, because I can see that they love what they do. And I don't need to tell them to step up every day. I don't need to tell them to get out there. They do that themselves because they feel valued and seen, and they know that the door is open for them. And that, is such a wonderful space to be in. I feel so very lucky that I've been able to create with them an organization that puts people first.
Yeah. Just so important in business today. And again, one of the keys to a winning team is how do you actually retain them?
Yeah.
Yeah, so well done. So just in finishing up then, Mel, any last words of wisdom for anybody that's viewing this video?
Oh, gosh. I think we're all facing, and regardless of the sector that we're in, the challenge of relevance as we move forward, versus, younger generations coming into the workforce, or younger customers, using our services. The social media is totally shifting where we're at. And, I think all of us are having to wake up every day going, how can we be different? And I think we, as industry, as leaders, we have to be brave, and we have to be willing to try something. Even with my team, I'm like, let's just give it a crack and learn from it. Because if we don't continue to push the boundaries, if we are not brave enough to do something that, in our time we may never have done. I don't see myself as a TikToker. Gosh, it makes me feel 100 years old when I look at TikTok. But I know that for our trade audience, we need to start to venture into that, and we need to find ways to create new content and new messaging. So I think as leaders, be brave. Don't be afraid to fail, because if you're not failing, you're actually not trying hard enough, is one of my theories. If you're not stuffing something up, you haven't tried hard enough. You've stayed in your comfort zone, and I think comfort lets us all down.
Yep.
So I'm a big believer of just give it a crack, and if it doesn't work, learn from it. As long as you're learning, you're going to be moving forward. So that's my biggest piece of advice to everybody, and it's something I have to remind myself about every day.
Yeah, great words of wisdom, and supporting risk taking is one of those keys to a winning team. I also put another caveat around that. Is if you do try something, and I'm encouraging you to try things differently. If you do make a mistake, tell somebody about it as soon as possible, so that we can then mitigate the impact that might have on the business.
Absolutely, you got to learn from it. And then when I say risk taking or try something new, I always paraphrase it as being intelligent experimentation. So don't be reckless, but you can experiment with intelligence and with, within the parameters of your appetite for risk and what that might look like. But and again, if you do fail from it, don't hide it. Share your learnings, share it so that your team learns from it, your board learns from it, and others, your peer group, because we should all be supporting each other to learn and move forward. I think, this day and age, like avenues like this, where we can talk and be really open and honest about what's working for us and what's not, we don't have to do this alone anymore. Like, I think as leaders, it can be really lonely. Like, I find days where, you are making decisions, and sometimes the weight is heavy. Can be really lonely. And I think we have to be better at reaching out and supporting each other in those leadership roles and providing safe spaces for us to go, oh my God, I want to pull my hair out today.
Yeah,
and that's okay, because I'm sure you want to pull your hair out some days too.
Look, absolutely. Mel, thanks so much for participating in this interview series today. And if anybody is looking to dig a hole in the ground, please
Absolutely.
reach out to Before You Dig in Australia, just for those basic safety reasons. And it's a wonderful service that you're providing. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Phil. It's been great.